episode of Genuinely Entertain, the Batman edition. Out March 4th, I have to say that this movie at 3 hours was really, really existential and philosophical, which is why today's theme of Genuinely Entertain is about the concept of vengeance and believing that you need to or can inflict your pain on somebody else and feel it be relieved. Part of what makes this version of Bruce Wayne, played by Robert Pattinson, so warped is that there's this feeling, this kind of pressure of owning up to your family's legacy and kind of simultaneously completing what they couldn't do in terms of justice and goals and helping and healing this world, while simultaneously believing that you have to be justice itself. And he really blurs the lines between vengeance and justice, because often we think and associate justice with punishment. It's this belief that we have, and it's an unfortunate belief, that somebody needs to pay for their sins. And I am the judge and jury, aka God, and I will decide how they pay, how much they pay, when they pay, where they pay. And in doing that, I will feel relief. And part of Bruce Wayne's journey, which is so interesting, is realizing that not only is that toxic, having that kind of really demagogic idea of yourself, but there's absolutely no way that in giving off that vibe, you don't summon it. Often in the life coaching or in the spiritual community, you often hear about frequencies and vibrations and this kind of belief that you attract who you are, what you are. If you're vibrating on a low frequency, then you will meet people at a low frequency. And what's so interesting is that he kind of inadvertently summons the Riddler in his life. We meet him and he's an absolute symbol in Gotham for vengeance and justice and the blurriness between both, because at the time everybody's kind of sick of Gotham's politics, their government, and this kind of false promises, a renewal project that has lasted 20 years that has helped absolutely nobody, has not renewed any buildings, renewed any lives. People are poorer and more anxious than ever, which sounds very familiar to what we're going through right now. I mean, you're definitely going to feel when you watch this movie so many interconnections in terms of what is happening right now in the world, particularly in terms of the January 6th Capitol riots and social media, and how it's kind of ignited this world of supremacy and people believing that they have to take up virtues like justice and become them, without realizing that if they have a very violent, negative view of what is justice, then they're not justice, or at the very least, they're not virtue. And becoming vengeance. He doesn't even call himself Batman. Like, he introduces himself as vengeance. I am vengeance. He ignites people within the city that are kind of not only obsessed with him and fascinated with him, but think that they can be him. If this guy can unlock the corruption and the criminality of Gotham's underworld, why can't I? And that introduces the Riddler, who is leaving riddles across the city for the Batman. And that's why Commissioner Gordon has to bring him into the crime scenes, and they're both investigating who is this guy, who's his next target, because he's targeting political leaders and powerful money people in the city that swore that they were going to help everybody and renew the city and build it back up, but instead were stealing funds or just a part of some type of criminality that furthered Gotham into darker, seedier territories that they swore they weren't going to do. So in essence, he is justice for those claiming to be justice. And he really, really, really admires the Batman. And it's such an interesting juxtaposition, because I feel like, and this is where the life coaching comes in, I have noticed in my own life, and again, as a life coach, I'll read all the books, I'll do the syllabus, I'll teach the lessons, but the greatest teacher is life, and I am her eternal student. And one thing that I know society does often is that you'll hear it. we'll say follow your gut, but we'll crush your gut. Like, it's something about intuition is weird to us. You know, we love the idea of it, but we don't believe in it. It's kind of like the spiritual version of Santa Claus. You know, like, really? You think you're Saint Nick? You think you're intuitive? Because a gut feeling is just something inside of you saying yes, no, or that's not it. And in a very loud world, it can feel very quiet. I often know that I'm in a good place spiritually, mentally, or bodily, like all my frequencies are aligning because my intuition is louder than my negativity. Usually it's the quiet voice that is telling you where you should go in your life, and your anxiety is loud and noisy and telling you, don't do that, stop it, that's crazy. And intuition never gets loud. So when you meditate and you quiet yourself, that's when you hear intuition clearly. It becomes your solid voice because it's never going to scream. Your spirit is about peace, it's about love, it's about calm. And it's so funny to see Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, make these mistakes. He's very intelligent, and I think people are going to love how this film amplifies that Batman is really smart. He's not just kick ass, he's not just rich, he's actually a detective. And it's funny how it's his intuition and his inability to follow it, or kind of his laser focus on what he stands for in terms of vengeance and justice, that blocks him from opening up and expanding and seeing more clues and seeing more ideas, and kind of really putting himself in the position of the Riddler to figure out who's his next victim, what is his ultimate message slash mission. And that happens so often in our own lives. I think that as people, we when we are anxious, or when we are so focused on being only one version of ourselves, we cut off our intuition, we cut off our openness, we cut off our ideas. And that not only cuts off our compassion for ourselves and our ability to dream of ourselves in new positions and new ways, but it cuts off our ability to protect ourselves from others and see what they're capable of, for better or for worse. But there's nothing like love to make you open up again. And obviously Selena Kyle is involved. Zoe Kravitz is absolutely amazing, and that opens up Bruce Wayne as well. It gives him more motivation to fight as he tries to unpack these new feelings of love that he has shut down because he is so obsessed with being this weird mold of justice and vengeance. And it's not by chance, again, that because he only sees himself as one way, he shuts that down, not only his intuition, but love. You could see that struggle of, you're not supposed to enter my life now. You're not supposed to be important to me right now. I have a goal, I have a mission, I have a soul's purpose. And the debate is out there, how many purposes people have. Some people believe you have one giant soul purpose. I think it's a mix. I think that there's an overarching lesson that our life has to learn, and it will come back in many ways and constantly be recycled, which you see in the film The Batman. Kind of, Bruce consistently learning that not caring about people and then claiming to defend and protect them, that just doesn't match. You can't live in two houses at the same time without traveling. And what the film does in terms of personal growth is so good. It's not often that you see that in a lot of, I can't say that, because Spider-Man No Way Home was such a good movie in terms of bringing a lead that you felt he was growing. You wanted to watch him grow, and you loved every minute of that journey. I think that Bruce, what makes him so intriguing as a character to watch, the R. Pat's version, is that he's so depressed. He is so dark and so bitter and so grim and confused and anxious and scared for what his family's legacy was, is, could have been. And what is fascinating about his growth is that we don't often see movies that show a very real awakening from depression. You could be depressed for years. You can isolate and self-sabotage for several years. You can be a weird functional depression, depressive, like Bruce, where you're still doing things, you're still kind of active, but you're not invested in anything really. And the things that you're invested in, there's such a toxic bond. There's never an element of clarity or growth, aka his laser focusedness on being justice vengeance. So I think ultimately what this movie and life coaching session shows is that you have to let go of the past and your pain, which it just seems so basic, obviously. But I don't think we often see that because of how we hold on to the past, it molds our present and it molds our future. The Batman, the whole time, no matter how Bruce frames it in his head, was born out of his desire for vengeance against the person that took his parents. And he finds that person, he gets that vengeance, and he still feels empty. Because there's always going to be a version of that person somewhere in the world. Even the Riddler, in some ways, is a version of that person. Somebody who just thought the darkest way is the best way to take power. And the question is, as you find different versions of your version of evil, or your image of evil, what version are you? If all you think of is them, what version of you are you being? And I hope to leave you with that question, and I hope you see the Batman, and I hope you enjoy this life coaching session. Please subscribe and check out DeandreReviews.com for my written reviews. I'm an RT critic, Rotten Tomatoes. And yeah, much love. Thank you so much for watching. This is Life Coaching with Movies. I'm Deandra Reviews. Yeah.